Hey guys, Jeremy here from School of Wok, back again for Wok Wednesday, and this week we are going to Southeast Asia, to Malaysia, for a Nasi Kandar, which is a mixed curry and rice. Don't forget, subscribe, like, comment, ding, hit that notification bell. Let's get cooking. Before I get into the curry, I'm gonna wash my rice. Now I've got some jasmine rice here. Whatever rice you're cooking, I would always recommend to wash it, especially with white rice. You wanna get that sort of starchy grain out of it. So wash it 2-3 times until it kind of runs a little bit more clear. And then I'm gonna measure out some chicken stock and some coconut water to go in it. Now I'm only doing a small amount of rice, so really liquid-wise, you're talking about 1-to-1 water to rice. I'm not using water, but I'm using chicken stock and coconut water to cook this rice through. So I'm gonna roughly measure half chicken stock and half coconut water to show you how to sort of guesstimate the right amount of liquid. So that roughly is the same amount in the same bowl of water to rice. So I'm going to pour that in. With small amounts of rice, you want to measure halfway up the first line of your index finger on top of the rice. And you can see here, I've definitely not got enough liquid in there yet. So I'm going to add a bit more stock coconut water. And then try that again. I feel like I still need a little bit more. I'm going to put a pinch of salt into the rice and a pinch of sugar. And the idea with this is that you're trying to use the sugar to accentuate the sweetness of the rice and work with the sweetness of the coconut water. The salt will work with that chicken stock and bring out that savoury flavour. Cover it with a lid, bring it to a boil. Once it's boiling, bring your heat down to medium to low heat so that it just simmers away for about 10 to 15 minutes. And this is not entirely essential, but if we're going for that real sort of coconut Malaysian rice flavour, then using these pandan leaves is absolutely great. And the pandan leaves are kind of like Southeast Asian vanilla. It's got that real nice sort of sweet aromatic flavour to it. So the easiest way to pop this into your rice is actually just tie a couple of knots into it. And I'm going to go for a couple of leaves, and it will really impart, again, more sort of aromatic sweetness to the rice. And then pop those knots of pandan leaves in, let those boil away, and you'll smell that after a minute or so. Once your rice is on, you're going to go straight onto your curry. Now, the first thing we're going to do with your curry is finely dice some onion and some ginger and garlic. Next, just got a couple of tomatoes, which I'm going to roughly sort of cut up. And then I'm going to marinate my chicken. I've got chicken thighs here on the bone with the skin on still. And you could keep your dry ground spices separate and put them into your curry when you're making your curry. But I quite like to put them in to season and flavour the chicken itself. So I've got some curry powder and a small amount of chili powder here. Some garam masala. About a teaspoon of turmeric. And then a good pinch of salt. Massage all those spices around the chicken. And then we'll sear this chicken so it gets a nice sort of golden brown colour around the skin and the meat. Now, I've actually forgotten to do something, so I'm going to do it now. But I actually would rather cut these whole thighs in half, just so that it goes a little bit further, but also the pieces of chicken take in a bit more of the curry flavour. So when you're cutting through any sort of bones, a cleaver is really useful for this, and you can sort of lift up the chicken along with the cleaver. Just go careful when chopping through. So the first thing you want to do is start to cook your whole spices. Now, you want a fair amount of oil in the base here because we're going to temper this oil, which basically means sort of frying your spices into the oil to bring out the essence and the flavors of the spices. So I've got some cassia bark or cinnamon stick, some star anise here, and some cardamom pods. They're all going to go into the curry straight away. Medium heat on this because you want to release those flavors but not burn those whole spices. My spices here are starting to fry nicely, and I'm getting an immediate sort of aroma of those whole spices. So as I say, I don't want them to burn, so you've got to be careful with that. I've got some curry leaves here. They are dry curry leaves, and I've soaked them in hot water to release some of their flavor. So I've got a good handful of curry leaves. If you can get fresh curry leaves, it's always better. But at the moment, we can't seem to find them. So I'm using dry, and I've soaked them in water for that reason. The curry leaves can go in, and my onions can go straight in after that. So I don't want my curry leaves to burn and spit at me or Chris for too long. So just going to bring that down slightly, and you want to sweat your onions down. Now, if you want colour in your curry, you're going to get more colour from the spices in the chicken itself as well. But I want to cook my onions to a point where they're really nice and softened, and then allow them to brown nicely before I then do anything else. My ginger and my garlic. And then I've got my additional pandan leaves, which I'm going to also just fold give those a stir. And the flavour of this, you're going to get loads of really aromatic spices going in, but you notice I'm not putting much chilli in this at all. I've got a little bit of chilli powder in the chicken, but I want this to be really like a really fragrant, relatively mild curry. So my rice, once the water is at a point where it's almost pretty much fully evaporated, then you'll see there's sort of little air pockets between the rice grains. At that point, switch it off, leave the lid on, and let it steam in its own steam for at least 15 minutes. So once your onions are starting to brown around the edges, this is a good time to get your chicken in. And ideally what you want to do is just make sure there's enough space for most of your chicken pieces to sear around the edges. So just push your onions to the side. You should have built up quite a lot of heat in the pan already, but you might want to, once your chicken's in, turn the heat up to sort of medium to high heat, just so that it can seal nicely. And the reason why I put the chicken in now, as opposed to waiting for the onions to brown too much more, is that I want them to continue to brown around the edges before I fold them in. Now you don't want your onions to burn, you just want them to brown. So after a couple of minutes, mix those onions in with your chicken, and then allow that chicken to seal a little bit more. Next, some tomato paste. This will add a bit of colour, but also a slight bit of tartness, which is nice. And then to work with that, a little bit of light soy sauce for seasoning. My tomatoes. And then at this point, I've got some palm sugar as well, which I'm just going to melt into that. And then give that another stir. And all the juices from the tomatoes and that light soy will start to lift any sticking of the spices off the bottom of the pan. I'd recommend at this point to give it a good scrape, but then also to then just leave it on that same sort of medium heat and cover it with a lid, just to allow the tomatoes to release some moisture. After a couple of minutes with the lid on, your tomatoes will release some of that juice, and you can see that juice sort of running in between the chicken. So we want to use that juice to get all that flavour of the spices off the bottom of the pan. And a lot of the time when you're making a good curry, this is actually quite a crucial part of it. So just keep scraping all the way through. As I add the chicken stock, you'll be able to scrape more and deglaze that pan even more. So I've scraped a fair bit already. Now I'm going to turn the heat up a little, so medium to high heat, and I'm going to pour a whole load of chicken stock into here. Whoa, that looks so good. Now I've got coconut water still from my rice as well, so I'm going to put maybe about 100 mils or so of coconut water into here, and that will just work with the sweetness of those pandan leaves as well. Bring that to a boil, give it another scrape carefully through, and then we'll season it up and then simmer it for about 20 to 30 minutes. So the last thing we're going to do is season this up. Remember, I've already put some palm sugar in there, so I'll have the sweetness in there. Just a little pinch of salt should bring that together nicely. And you want a nice balance of sweet and salty, but more savoury in flavour. I'm going to leave the lid off. I've turned the heat down to a sort of lower heat, just so it's bubbling away, simmering away. And I'm leaving the lid off so that it can just evaporate and the sauce can thicken whilst the chicken's cooking. And look at the colour of this. You just want to pour over the top. Yeah, you can really taste the cinnamon in that. And that base flavour of the curry leaves. It's like sweetness of the pandan. It's almost got a slight smokiness to it as well, which will come from the cooking of the spices and the marinade of the chicken as well. Takes me back to Malaysia. Guys, if you like this type of cooking as much as I do, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, ding, hit the notification bell. Thank you. So guys, if you know Nasi Kandar, or the mixed rice that I've been cooking, what are your favorite type of curries that you like to put on your mixed rice like this? Let us know in the comments below.